This video tutorial is going to be about making art with supplies that you have around your house. I'm not going to use any traditional art supplies in these demos. I'm going to go over some basics again of using pencils. I know we've done this in class, but I'm going to go over value. We'll go over shading, how to hold your pencil, and just do a little demonstration of things that are possible with a pencil like this. So this is just a little kid pencil. It's pretty fun. Yeah, satisfying. Basically though, any pencil, it's made out of graphite, so this actually is very similar to an art supply that you would get at the store, at the art supply store. Depending on how hard you push, you can get a very light value. Pushing a little harder, you get a darker value. And if you want the deepest, darkest value, give it all you've got. You can already see that there's a good amount of variation in the value. Remember, value is the darkness or lightness of things, depending on how hard you're pushing. The other way to deepen your value is to apply more layers. I'm going to do, let's make this a mountain. All right, we've got a general layout of a mountain. I'm going to make like some shadows and some rocks out here on the mountain. So if I wanted to increase the value, make it darker right here, you can either push harder or you can continue to layer. You have a lot more control if you're applying more and more layers rather than pushing hard when you're just beginning. Once you get used to using your office supply pencils, you'll figure out your own methods that work best for you, ways to hold things. The other thing I wanted to show you is the way you hold a pencil. Some of you have different pencil grips than me, and that's fine. But if you hold it closer to the tip, you'll be able to control it better and get little fine details. Make some little trees down here. Very small trees. Happy little trees. Yeah. So this is best for precision, holding it near the end. If you hold it a little bit further back and on the side, it's easier for light values and covering larger areas. And if you think about it, doing the detail work and holding your pencil this way, you're using the graphite just from the very tip of the pencil. If you're holding it this way, you've got more surface area of graphite being applied to the paper. So it's a broader stroke, it's smoother typically, so if you're looking for very smooth shading, you can use the pencil on its side. It's always nice to combine techniques, so I'm using the pencil on its side here. Then I'm going to go on top, I'm switching my grip, go on top of that existing shading and do the texture of the trees like I did over here. I liked that little swoosh for some reason. So as you're doing your drawings this week, think about value, the darkness and lightness of things. Higher contrast is going to make a more dramatic drawing in the end. So try to get everything on your range of 1 through 10 like we've practiced on the value scales, no matter what media you're using. This was pencil, but I'm going to show you some other media as well. Media means art supply, remember? Yeah. The other thing that you can do with graphite, of course, and you don't want to rely on this all the time, but is smearing or smudging your graphite. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. I'm just going to lay in some graphite over here to give me something to smudge. I'm a fan of just getting in there, getting messy, and using my finger. So that'll give you nice soft values. course, go over it again. I'm gonna make another mountain back here. Maybe I would want to use that softer technique for the sky. Or another favorite of mine is using a paper towel. If you have extra paper towels, don't use them all up for your art if you're running low on paper goods at home. But I like to take a little piece of paper towel and then fold it up real tight. This is the technique that I've made over the years, making like a little flat packet and then folding it in half once, because then I have an area to smudge with here that's larger. And I also have this corner, that I can do fine details with. And by folding it like that and folding it over in half, it gives it enough solidity, it has enough structure that it'll keep that point for fine detail work. So let's go ahead and do the sky with this a little bit. Give these mountains some mist, maybe a cloud at the top. So I'm using the big flat part of the paper towel. You can get a soft shift in the values. It does also kind of wipe away some of the graphite, so you'll see it's not as dramatic as it was when I first laid it down. You also can use this in other areas. If you've gotten your paper towel all full of graphite from smudging over here, you can then transfer it to another area. Okay, so there's some pencil. Next in my office supply stash is a ballpoint pen. I think I have a purple one too. If you remember back to October, which we called Inktober, the world calls Inktober, we did some pen techniques. There was hatching, cross-hatching, stippling. So using office supplies as art supplies is completely a valid way to work. I had an AP student a few years ago who scored a perfect 5 on her portfolio, and the majority of her pieces were done using office supply ballpoint pens. They're beautiful. Hey, I'll include one in this video. She told me it was okay to share. So right now I'm increasing the value here of these mountains, by doing some hatching. Remember that hatching is just drawing lines close together for darker values and further apart for lighter values. This is a technique that's used often in graphic novels and comic books. Hatching is the lines going parallel to each other. Cross-hatching is when you want to deepen them even more, so you do lines going in another direction. So we've got hatching, we've got cross-hatching for pen technique. Another method that you can use is simply kind of scribbling with the pen. And you can actually get, with a ballpoint pen like this, you can get different values depending on your pressure to some extent. Not as much as with a graphite pencil, but if I'm pushing very, very lightly, you can kind of barely see the pen. I'm going to make a little valley in between these two mountain peaks. And then if you push down a little harder, you'll get a darker pen value. So on this section right here, I'm just kind of scribbling. I'm lightly moving the pen in kind of small circles or ovals to get this sketchy kind of look. Typically, the way to increase values with a pen, make them darker, is to do more layers. Don't forget about the rest of your drawing. It's good to work the entire thing all at once and not focus too much on details at first. We've talked about this. I'm going to make a waterfall. Think about your composition, think about diagonals. rule of thirds. If you don't remember what any of those things are, holler. I'll tell you. This is going to be an abstract waterfall. I'm going to switch over to purple for this waterfall over here. Maybe, if my purple pen works. Ew, this is sticky. My office supplies have been sitting in strange places. Alright, just kidding on the purple pen. It doesn't work. Some of you might also have, this is a ballpoint pen. It's got the little, an actual ball that you can see that lays down the ink. And it acts differently than if you have a felt tip pen, like a Sharpie. Or a, my office supplies have been sitting too long. This is, the name is escaping me for a moment, but it's a pen that has a metal nib and the ink just flows out without the ball. You might have some like this. Uniball makes a really cool pen that's great for drawing. So if you have any Uniball pens in your offices, or maybe your parents have one, check that out. Happy trees. So many happy trees. I'm actually going to wait on these trees because I want to do the lake first, and then put the trees over it. We're starting to get something with office supplies. Let's try some things with the Sharpie. Ballpoint pen is great for hatching, cross-hatching, and this scribbling technique. It's not as good for stippling. Remember that stippling is when you make a whole lot of dots to build up your values. One more mountain back here. Maybe a few. This is a whole mountain range. Nobody's gonna stop us. Oh man, I am feeling a little Rossy. Stippling. You can do it with a ballpoint pen. It's just a little harder than with a felt tip pen. Stippling is putting those dots close together for darker values and then further apart for lighter values. With a felt tip pen, it's very easy. The ink goes down better. Sharpie, if you have some Sharpies kicking around, is a great felt tip pen, and of course it'll give you the deepest blacks. Do a little stippling down here by the trees. Stippling takes a very long time, so let's speed this up a little. You can do a combination of stippling and solid black marks for even more contrast. You could do even hatching, cross-hatching. I'm a fan of combining techniques for the best effect. I maybe wouldn't necessarily have chosen that technique for this little corner if I wasn't doing a demo. Because now, is my composition balanced? No, but that's okay. We'll figure out how to balance it. It's too dark over here, is what I mean, and it's lighter in other areas. Of course, you can bust out the crazy stuff like a highlighter. This is going to look very out of place, But I think it's really cool to give yourself a challenge and use these very limited supplies and see what you can do with them. So don't worry about messing up your drawing. This is all new, and it's all practice, and it's all fun. And if it looks weird, there's a way to fix it. There's always a way to fix it. So I'm going to put some highlighter on these mountains as if the sun is hitting it on one side. And it actually looks kind of cool. It looks cool, but it's too dramatic. It doesn't fit with the rest of the style of the piece. Like it's missing the unity of mark making that we might want to see. So what I could do is go back over it with, I lost my pencil. Once it's dry, you could then layer over it again with graphite. That'll knock down some of that fluorescent intensity, make it a little bit more cohesive with the rest of the piece. Unless you're looking for that contrast and you want it to be kind of crazy, which is fine. You just want everything to look purposeful. So I'm going to leave this right here, the highlighter, and come back to it because I'm not sure yet if that's the look that I want in this piece. Mechanical pencils are also an option. I usually prefer not to use these in class just because the graphite is so tiny. But if you like this sort of thing or you want little details, it's great for little details. I actually personally use mechanical pencils all the time. I just like to teach how to use regular pencils first, and then you can always choose to go back to what you like. But if I'm doing these tiny little trees over here, this actually is great because the graphite is thinner in diameter without having to sharpen it all the time. Check out this super cool pencil sharpener. It's my favorite one. There's some trees on the far side of this lake. Speaking of lakes, what if I want to put some color in there? You have options. One of them is making your own paint. And I actually haven't tried this yet, so we're about to see how it's going to work. I've got some coffee, a Keurig cup that's left over from breakfast this morning, and some paprika. Try not to use things that are new, that are useful for your families. This was used coffee, so I didn't open a brand new coffee just to get some pigment. I made myself a cup, then I opened it. And the paprika, I just have a ton of it, but please check with your families first to make sure that things you're using for art supplies, that it's okay. So what I did is I poured those things into a little bit of water, and this is the coffee, and it's been sitting all morning for maybe an hour and a half. Just kind of steeping and making this nice, pretty, chocolatey brown color. And then same with the paprika. I have toothpicks just to stir it and make sure everything is dispersed. All the pigment is dispersed. But Miss G, I don't have a paintbrush at home. Maybe. There are lots of things that you can use as paintbrushes. I'm going to use the same little piece of paper towel that I used for blending my graphite. Let's see how that works. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm about to find out. Take a little bit of coffee. Since this is computer paper, and I forgot to mention that, but this is just computer paper, wet media might make it ripple a little bit. But another trick that you can do at home is you can iron it. Once it's completely done, put a second piece of paper on the top just to protect the surface. Use a low setting on your iron. You can iron out most of the wrinkles. I'm getting a little bit of a mark from the coffee, not as much as I thought I would get. So I might need to let that steep a little bit longer. I'm gonna, on a separate piece of paper, just like really blob some on there and see. One thing that you could do is kind of pre-treat your paper with some of these colors, and then you'll have a nice colored background to work on top of. I'll do that later with this piece of paper. Show you what I mean. You can kind of see the color of the coffee. If you make a stronger cup of coffee, it'll work better. If it's okay with your parents, check first, but fresh coffee before it's brewed actually will give you a darker mark, darker paint. Let's try the paprika. Another little piece of paper towel here. If you are experiencing a shortage in your paper supplies, you can also use a rag or an old piece of t-shirt that you might cut up. Yeah, paprika is a very highly pigmented spice, so you can get a beautiful orange color. I don't know if you can see it very well on the camera, but it's a very pretty orange. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this one on the mountain. We'll leave a little bit white at the top because maybe it's snowy. And if it's okay and allowed, you have access to these spices in a slightly larger quantity, you can also use it directly on the paper. I'm just going to put a little on my finger, because that'll give you a darker mark. Putting it on top of the moist, like wet parts of the page will give you darker paprika marks. We're putting it, let's put some in this part of the waterfall. I'm rubbing pretty hard to get this color to go in there, and you can see it's a lot more subtle than on the wet areas. But you can still get, some color variation with rubbing dry spices onto things. And here's a fun thing. If you happen to have access to these, makeup brushes work great as paint brushes. So you could use this to apply your paint rather than the paper towel or t-shirt. And then that feels a lot more like the painting that we're used to, painting technique that we're used to doing. Oh, it feels good to paint. Try this, y'all. Also, just to point out, this is certainly not a requirement, but you can order art supplies online still. Amazon has plenty of stuff. All the chain stores have websites that you can order from. But again, not a requirement. You can do plenty of things with what you already have at home. Some of your media, like this pen, I'm finding was water soluble. So I'm getting kind of some pretty marks by adding water to the pen that was already there. The Sharpie is permanent, so that won't go anywhere no matter how wet you get it. But this pen, let me make an area that's even a little darker, because that was a cool discovery. Really, as you're looking around your house and finding these supplies, just try doodles like this, because that's when you're going to discover like the potential of the art supplies or the home supplies that you're using as art supplies. You might do things that you weren't expecting. I haven't tried all of these things. I've never painted with paprika before. You're seeing it first here. There's more of that ink. I'm going to put a little bit of the orange paprika water on it and see if I can loosen up. Yeah, that's pretty cool. This is I got this pen on the internet. It's it's in Japanese, so I don't know what it's called, but it's a nice little ink pen that actually, this is a ballpoint. Oh, it's a roller ball. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a rollerball pen. The ink is more liquid than a ballpoint pen, a little bit. But check it out. See if you can find a pen that lays down like a more liquid material than a ballpoint pen, and then try adding some water, because that works pretty good. I like it. Graphite is also somewhat water soluble, so if you have some graphite that's already there, you can kind of melt it a little bit. Let's do that one with coffee. Okay, next, more makeup. Again, if it's not yours, ask first. You can use the actual makeup applicator that it comes with. Mine is crumbling. This is old, cheap makeup, so the applicator just fell apart. You can use your fingers. You could use a makeup sponge. You could use the paper towel. With makeup, you're just transferring the pigment onto the paper. Oh, it's kind of shimmery, this one. Pretty. So I've got a purple lake. Remember that things don't have to be the actual color, the local color. You can use expressive color. You can make things monochromatic. You can draw the whole thing with highlighter, anything you want. I've got some black and white here. This is going to work hopefully similar to charcoal. That's my idea. It does, kind of. That's such a pretty little shimmer. Make my lake kind of shimmery. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it is shimmering at me. Whew. Got a little bit of green. Let me try applying with that paper towel and see if that gives me a different intensity or different mark. And I like to fold it up and then fold it in half. Makeup is just like art supplies in that the higher quality kind typically has more pigment, but the cheaper kind will still give you a really nice range of values depending on how much you put on. That's a cool green. I'm just gonna fill in this whole thing. When you're drawing, it's always good to kind of do the background stuff first and then draw on top of it, or painting or whatever, because then you're not stuck trying to go around tiny little details. Like if I was trying to do green around the trees, the mark making wouldn't look as smooth and cohesive. Again, something I've never tried, but let's see what this Neutrogena Natural Radiant Look SPF 30 Fresh Feel Oil Free Bronze Glow 50 looks like on your drawing. Let's put this around the edges of the lake. Oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know how well this is going to dry. Actually, it feels like it's drying out pretty well. Never used bronzer on art before, but it's actually working pretty well. I might blend that in a little bit because these edges are pretty stark, so I might go over it with another media once this is dry. I'm gonna go right through these trees for now. See what I mean about, like, if I had stopped where that tree was and tried to pick up again, my line might be a little bit off. This way it looks more purposeful. And I can just go back and put the tree details back on top, or even smudge them away, because that works great. I'm just trying to balance out the color a little bit. So if I just left it there, that looks a little discordant. Like, one of these things is not like the other. Remember that song? It's a good song. We're getting there, guys. This is turning into a landscape. Another material I kind of thought of is nail polish. I might actually do this. I'm just going to do a little bit right now. I'm going to do it at the end because I don't want to stick my hand in wet nail polish as I'm working. But hey, that works kind of good too. It's a little smelly. I don't recommend smearing nail polish with your hands because one, it'll stick to your skin, and two, I'm just very hesitant with any kind of chemical. I'm careful with art supplies because if there's chemicals in it, you don't want that in your body. Some people are kind of sensitive to nail polish, the smell of it, so if you feel any discomfort, don't use it. That works pretty well. I'm going to see, just out of curiosity, I'm going to see how it blends with the napkin. It dries kind of quickly, so I don't know how well this is going to work. But yeah, I don't like the way that turned out. I think the nail polish is probably better to brush on straight from the bottle. Another thing that I thought of to try is nature. I have a beautiful Chinese parasol tree in my backyard. This large leaf underneath that I'm using as a plate is from my Chinese parasol tree. This is one of the leaves, but it's a small one. Actually, the plate is a small one too. It grows enormous leaves, but they're just starting to come out for the spring. But there's chlorophyll in leaves, right? And it's green. So if you take some plants and wad them up, break them a little bit, or use your fingernails to kind of make some cuts or break up the leaf, then you can rub it on paper and get some kind of cool colors. That is a much prettier green than the eyeshadow. Some leaves have more chlorophyll than others, so go on a little scavenger hunt and pick out a bunch of stuff, and then you can see what works the best for your purposes. I'm running out of pigment. My green is getting lighter over here because I've already scraped it onto the area of the drawing over here. I found these little flowers in my yard too. It's a weed, but isn't that pretty? I think it's a weed. I don't know. You tell me. I don't know much about flowers. Let's see if I can get any pink. Not so much. It does look kind of brown though, and that might be kind of cool. Try the Chinese parasol tree leaf. Ooh, going over the highlighter with the leaf looks kind of cool. If you have glue, like Elmer's glue, you can also add pigments and coffee grounds and leaves and things as kind of a collaged on aspect. of the piece. If you don't have any glue and you want to try it, and you have flour, take some flour, add small amounts of water and while you're stirring until you get the right consistency, and then it actually makes a really good glue. Try some grass. This is St. Augustine. Ooh, that gives me a nice vibrant green. It's a little harder to hold. Maybe you can improvise a grass holder stylus. Probably use these leaves in the actual trees. Be a good spot for it. This is another weedy kind of thing. I have a lot of weeds in my backyard. Priorities, man. Some green, and then I'll put the details of these trees. I'm going to put some taller spruce trees kind of in the foreground. Foreground is closer to you. Background is far away from you. Remember? Middle ground is in the middle. Ha! Not even joking. I like this little weedy flower leaves are giving me a nice green. I think it's my favorite out of all of them. Might be a little bit of a reflection of the trees in that lake. So put a little green in the lake. What should I do for the sky, y'all? Could try another color of this eyeshadow. This one was a very inexpensive eyeshadow, and so the pigments aren't very dark. If you are using makeup, try some different types. I just brought eyeshadow, but maybe blush would give you a better color. Oh, you know what I did bring? I brought a lip liner. Let's try that in the sky. Oh, it's an eyeliner, even better. No, lip wand. Just kidding. It's got two ends though. How convenient is that for an art supply? This actually might work pretty well. I assume I'll be able to smear it. Actually feels really nice going on the paper. It's kind of buttery. Again, I don't know if this is going to dry completely or if it'll remain something that'll smudge on the paper forever. It feels like it's drying, kind of absorbing into the paper. And check out the different textures. If I use it very lightly, it gives me kind of that grainy texture. Kind of like it. Might leave that in some areas. Leave some white for maybe like clouds coming in. Maybe I want to emphasize those clouds. Going back to my subpar eyeshadow. That's not doing a whole lot. I'm going to keep going and make this into a finalized piece. But at this point, I'm just going to speed it up and challenge you to Go on a scavenger hunt inside your house, outside your house. See what you can find that just makes a mark. Start, if you have your sketchbook with you, great, use your sketchbook. If not, just have the supply. Computer paper will be good. Oh, I didn't talk about substrates. A substrate is what you're making your art on. So this paper is my substrate. You can use other things. A lot of us have cardboard around. Don't use your toilet paper. You can use the roll the toilet paper came on. You could cut this open, use some of the cardboard. A lot of us have cardboard boxes, so that can certainly be used with any of these supplies, and it'll give you kind of a cool looking background, and it could become part of your narrative of using these supplies that we have on hand during an unprecedented time in our life. Regular Crayola markers that you can get at the grocery store are actually water soluble. So you can use these to add color to your piece, and then to make it look a little bit more professional, because you don't want it to look like a little kid drawing, you can apply water and turn it into paint. I'm going to use this makeup brush and a blue Crayola marker. I wiped most of the water off of the brush just so that you're not saturating the paper too much, because it'll wrinkle and possibly tear since it's just computer paper. But this can give you some nice effects. It won't smooth out quite as nicely as watercolor paint, but if you're doing, you know, something in addition to just coloring with them, you can certainly use Crayola markers to get more professional looking results. I'm going to try getting the paper wet first and then using the marker. I don't know really what's going to happen, but let's try it. Made it a little soft on the edges. Not as much as I was hoping for, but that's okay. All the same pen and ink and marker, Sharpie, ballpoint pen, felted pen, whatever techniques, of course, also work with marker. I'm going to try something new. Instead of drawing first with the marker and then applying water, I've got water on my brush. Grab some of this blue directly from the marker. If you have the thicker Crayola markers, it'll probably work better. Oh, that's nice. Look, it looks just like watercolor. Sweet. Looks like this color that I'm taking off isn't going to last terribly long. Oops. But hopefully the marker, I can put the cap back on and put it face down, and hopefully it'll recharge, kind of get some more of that pigment up at the top. You can also completely disassemble a marker and then put the pieces into a small amount of water, and that will create some watercolor paint for you as well.
What in beautiful things I have found in this place that is circling all around the sun. What in beautiful dream that could flash on the screen and then make of a night be gone from me. Soft and sweet, let me hold it close and keep it here with me. this ghost all around your voice as it's rolling and ringing through me. Soft and sweet, where the notes all bend and reach above the trees. Now I remember you, how I would push my fingers through your mouth to make those muscles move and make your voice so smooth and sweet. And now we keep where we don't go, all secret sleeping winter blues with one you loved so long ago. Now he don't even know his name. What a beautiful face I have found in this place that is circling all around the sun. And when we meet on the ground and we love me now, God, I'll be laughing with everyone I see. Can't believe how strange it is to be anything at all.
Here's to all the unexpected changes in the winter air, and the way you smiled that evening when I opened up the door and loved you like you'd never gone. Here's to all the stolen moments. Here's to taking it too far. Here's to all the ways you've loved me, and the secrets that we've scattered to the stars. I want to hold you close, don't let me go. December wrapped her arms around us, even when you're far. I want to feel you here, right next to me. You're my favorite fantasy, the one I reach for in my dreams. Here's to waking up on Friday with my arm across your chest, coffee in the kitchen brewing, and the way you asked me if I want a cup and how I slept. Here's to you and me together in the moments that are ours. Here's to legends and to romance. Here's to planes and trains so I can travel wherever you are. I know it's meant to be, even though I don't believe in fate. You've changed me totally. I can't explain how I'm so sure. All I know is I'll be waiting on the other side of the door. kiss me. So kiss me.